I'm going to do as much as I can to get biooptimizers into South Africa, because, and I'm going to talk about your empirical, experience, your history, but also your science. You committed to science. So those two railway tracks are very, very powerful. But why enzymes, and should everybody be taking enzymes, and should they be changing their enzymes? And, it's a minefield out there. If someone should be taking it always, if they should give it a break to their gut. I mean, I took enzymes for a while. I don't take them now. If I start some regenerative prolotherapy or PRP or stem cells or ozone, I'll take enzymes for maybe 3-6 months. But I'm training hard 7 days a week generally. Does everybody need enzymes, Wade?
I believe so, because it's a natural part of the dietary consumption levels of every species on the planet except humans, because we're the only species that cooks our food. So it just wasn't accounted for in some of our dietary channels. Now, let's look at another piece, and I'll go and cite enzyme nutrition and enzymes, food enzymes for health and longevity, written back in around the 40s by Dr. Edward Howe. And the first research was Pottinger's cats, about which is a precursor, where they fed cats an enzymatically deficient diet, and by the third generation they ran into all the problems. So Dr. Howe expanded those experiments from rats to cats to dogs, and what he found was, when you fed every species that he fed an enzymatically deficient diet, a few things happened. Number one, that the species started to change their social behavior, that they didn't start acting like the normal aspects. Number two, they started to develop an array of genetic-based diseases. And number three, by third generation, they lost the ability to procreate. And so in the 1950s, I believe it was, he predicted the same thing would happen to human, was the change in the dietary practices that were happening. So it turns out we're kind of in that space, a rapid rise in genetic-based diseases. Obviously, you turn on social media, there's definitely strange antisocial behavior relative to normal human conduct. And fertility is a big issue in the modern world. And there's a bunch of causes to that. The other thing that he noticed is that when he fed animals and supplemented their diet with enzymes, they lived longer than the other enzymes. And I was like, okay, well, is that the case? And then I thought, well, wait a second. Every culture in the world has developed the practice of fasting as a way to heal. We also see in nature, I grew up in a rural area, that if an animal is sick, they stop eating. Why is that? Well, you free up, according to Howe, you free up your metabolic enzymes when you're fasting and not eating. Now, if you look at all the longevity studies, the number one correlation with longevity is you eat less. So is it the eating less, or is it the metabolic costs of digesting the food that is draining? You're converting your metabolic enzymes into digestion. When you fast or you reduce your diet, then you're not putting as much strain on the system. Therefore, the system is able to extend longer, because enzymes control every single process in the body, from like thinking to blinking. There's over 25,000 enzymatic processes, which are categorized into families. Proteases, which break down protein, amylases, which break down carbohydrates, and lipases, which break down fats. And then you could go into cellulases, which break down plant fibers. Now, there's variations within all those families as well, like Masson with 17 different enzymes inside of it. But the key elements that we see is proteolytic activity. So undigested proteins and the inflammatory response in the body is one of the biggest causes of disease in the body, of dysfunction. And that's basically proteins aren't getting digested, they're getting eaten up by bad bacteria producing endotoxins, things like that, or proteins are breaking through the intestinal lining and getting into the system, and the body's seeing that as some sort of pathogen that needs to be attacked. So that takes energetic resources. Every time that you are under attack, well, it's like if your country was under attack, you're going to have to garner resources. It's going to cut down supply, and that's going to keep you from doing other things. And so I looked at, well, could we accelerate the benefits of fasting if we took super physiological dosages of enzymes. If that theory turns out, well, we were able to produce better results from fasting. In other words, a better preservation of lean body mass, a reduction of food cravings, as well as an improvement of speed of healing and loss of body fat during these fast processes, just by doing the exact same thing, the exact same person, but adding enzymes versus not adding enzymes. So from that process, we were able to ascertain through basically observational clinical data of people's responses to that. We also were able to find out later on that from hematomas, scar tissue from surgery, and recovery, if you're using proteolytic enzymes, we could see that improvement. And then there was all the research from Dr. Gonzalez in cancer research, where they were using super physiological dosages of proteolytic enzymes in order to attack tumors. And that was very exciting. And people want to research that. I think it's really important to do so. And so I applied it to my own life and improved my recovery, my performance, my ability to train harder, longer, faster, and recover better. And so we started in 2004 advocating this with our first product, Enzymes, the first version of that, Matt and I, and it built almost like a cult-like following in the athletic world. And now almost every protein in the market at the high-end side has some form of digestive enzymes. And I like to think that Matt and I contributed to that message almost 20 years ago.